Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How is everybody out there on this Wednesday, October 5th of 2022? Before we get into anything fun, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate us 5 stars on Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. And as always, go find us on the socials. Just go search the Alex Cuesta Show. So, Dave, it's apparent I can't talk today. That's already started to be a thing. Apparently, I can't speak.
Not a great start. Not
Not
a
a
great
great
start. You got to bring it
start.
around. You got to bring it around.
I got to bring it around. If I can't, Dave, you have to carry this show, which might be a real detriment to the show
We'll
in
see.
general.
We'll see what happens.
We shall see. So if anyone has been listening at all, last week we had a fun guest. We had Lenny Melnick on, not Larry Melnick, Lenny Melnick. That's an inside joke if you go listen to it. Great fantasy sports talk, the original fantasy sports radio host. So that's a fun show that we had. But one thing that makes us great, Dave, is our guest. It really is. We always have solid guests. And this week is no exception. I'm really excited to have this guest on. Adam B. Coleman. He is an op-ed writer, public speaker, host of a Good Faith Space, Twitter Spaces show, founder of Wrong Speak publication, and author of Black Victim to Black Victor. Adam, what's going on, man?
Nothing much. How you doing?
Doing really, really good. Like I said, excited to have you on. Followed you on Twitter for a little. I've seen some of the things you said. Me and David just talked about one of your Substack pieces, particularly the one that just came out, which I want to talk about in a little bit, which we both love. We think is fantastic.
Thank you.
Just really pumped to have you on. And where I want to start is that book that I just talked about, Black Victim to Black Victor. And I feel like the title would shock a lot of people and might kind of put a little people on the back. Now, for those that are just listening, this is an audio-only podcast. Adam, are you a black man?
Last time I checked.
So, yes. So the story is Black Victim to Black Victor. Tell me a little bit behind what made you want to write this story or write your book.
So there were, I'll go at the base level. I had an idea to write a book a couple of years prior. I didn't know what I wanted to write about. It was more of kind of like a legacy thing. I wanted something to leave behind for my son. And I just thought a book was a good idea. But it wasn't until the death of George Floyd, but it was less about the death of George Floyd, but it was more about the reaction towards the death of George Floyd. And while I think, the entire situation is a tragic situation, it was more of me kind of stepping back and looking at the world around me. It seemed like everybody was losing their mind over one very ambiguous kind of odd situation, and just extrapolating it into being this huge societal moment that we all need to come into this racial reckoning. And I just thought to myself, like, I'm in my mid-30s. I've lived in 5 states. I've been in white majority areas. I've been in racially mixed areas. And the vast majority of my life experience has been nothing but positive, right? Have there been maybe racially insensitive moments? Yeah, very few and far in between. And on one hand, I could tell you the moments I felt uncomfortable or someone said something to me in my life that may have been racially motivated. Outside of that, I mean, my life has been relatively fine if you're talking about like on a racial experience. And now suddenly I'm supposed to reimagine this world that I never lived in to being something of complete animus that I've never experienced. And on top of that, I'm looking at people that I know that have had similar life experiences as far as their interactions, their successes, and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, they're victims. And I just didn't like that particular narrative, mainly for myself. I didn't like the narrative that the media was portraying about, especially Black men, but about Black people in general, that I'm suddenly going to be worried about some cop killing me. And that's how strong the narrative can be, to make people extremely paranoid, to make them think that, they're just, as LeBron James put it, he's going to wake up one day and get off on the wrong side of the bed and thinks he's going to shoot a black person today. Like that entire narrative, there's so much wrong with it. So much inaccuracies. And so much that doesn't make sense, especially for someone like him who gets chauffeured into, arenas across the country by the very police that he's basically degrading. So outside of that, back to your original question, why did I write the book? I wrote the book because I felt like I couldn't talk about it. Like, I wasn't really big into social media at the time. I didn't have a Twitter. I barely had a Facebook account. And I knew I couldn't say what I really wanted to say on Facebook. And I knew I didn't really have any outlets. Yeah, you kicked off. Or just unnecessary arguments. I'm one of those people, like you guys follow me on Twitter. I don't argue with people because it's a pointless venture. So I didn't want to argue with people. I just wanted to express how I felt. And it wasn't until I started going to like free speech forums where I felt comfortable enough to express how I felt and found out that I'm not the only one that feels this way. And actually got encouragement for people to say, hey, you should write more often. And from there, I was like, you know what? Maybe this is it. Maybe this is the book that I've been wanting to write. So I sat down. It took me about, I want to say, somewhere between 8 and 9 months. I forget now, until I published it. And I just self-published because I didn't want to hunt down publishers. And I just wanted to put it out there. This is how I feel. This is what I said, and I'm sticking to it and just put it out there. So, from there, like I said, I didn't have any sort of public presence at all. I wasn't even public about my politics. So all of this is actually pretty new. Basically, I didn't publish the book until the end of March of 2021. And it wasn't until I want to say August that I decided to finally use Twitter. So all the things that have happened has basically happened in about a year.
That's awesome. It has to be a whirlwind for you going from just a guy who has some ideas, who wants to express himself to now, someone who, you're a good speaker, you're a good writer. So I think people are now realizing that. And, as they realize it, more and more people like me want to have you on our shows to kind of talk to you and pick your brain. Now, you mentioned George Floyd was kind of the clicking point for you, right? The reaction, not necessarily what occurred with George Floyd, but kind of the reaction. Was there any inklings during the Obama years when kind of the Michael Brown things occurred, the Breonna Taylor, all the little things going on there that were similar in message, I guess, in a way to George Floyd? Was there any time when those things started to happen and, the reaction was so swift? And then as we got more and more facts, it was kind of like maybe everything initial reaction wasn't correct about those. Were you starting to have doubts then, or were you still entrenched with, because I saw a snippet of an interview you posted with Michelle Tafoya, and you said before this, you were never you grew up with them around Democrat family, a lot of things, everyone voted Democrats, everyone kind of didn't, in your neighborhood, they weren't actually acting like liberals, but during election time, they had thought like liberals because they had to, they were told to. Did anything start to click for you when those things were occurring and facts were starting to come out about them, or were you still very entrenched?
So it's interesting because I always say that I was a Democrat, but I was never a progressive. I was never a leftist. I'm much the same as I was before.
And we find that out a lot. I don't want to cut you off, but there's guys like Tim Pool, James Lindsay, who me and David have talked about a bunch here, and they're claimed and labeled right-wing extremists. And Tim Pool is an Occupy Wall Street guy with Vice. That's how he got his fame, Occupy Wall Street and then Vice. James Lindsay voted for Barack Obama twice and happily says he would do it again. These aren't individuals, and I think you fall into the category of you have not changed. It's the left has kind of left you, and they went further left, and now you're seeing that you agree with more on the right, not necessarily in principle, but the fact where a lot of people on the right are like, oh, that's how you feel? Cool. Awesome. Enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely been a political shift. So I won't say that I haven't changed at all. I'll tell you one thing. The biggest thing that I've definitely changed is I am pro-life, 100%. I'm to the extreme of no exemptions, and that's controversial, and I have my reasonings for it. But that's basically the only thing I've really been really just completely changed. Outside of that, basically my viewpoint is that I am pro free speech, which I've always been pro free speech. That was always a left wing position, right? I am anti censorship because I'm pro free speech. I was always respectful as far as religion, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. I just never took a hard line position on like far left things or even progressive things.
You're just an American. You're an American. You're an American. What you described is like the American ideal.
Right. Right. And here's the thing. And I've done this myself. I wrote an article early on saying that I am a conservative. And what I mean by that is I am socially conservative. So politically, I'm about the same as I was prior. Obviously it depends on what the policy is. I've kind of flipped on, but socially I'm more conservative than I was prior, where I'm more conservative as far as being principled. So much of the things I believed before, but I wasn't acting on it. I was doing things that I would say to myself, yeah, that makes sense. I believe this, but I wasn't actually acting on it. I wasn't being consistent. That's the word I'm looking at. I wasn't being consistent with it. So if we were going to the pro-choice, pro-life, I was uncomfortably pro-choice, right? And even back then, I say back then like it was 20 years ago, but it wasn't that long ago, the Democrat position was acknowledging that you're killing a baby, right? It wasn't
It was safe, legal, and rare. Safe, legal, and rare. That's what it was.
Safe, legal, and rare. It was an uncomfortable position, but it was a position of giving people the option to do what they want with their body, right? And now we've moved into this very strange territory of basically being anti-natalists, pro-abortionists.
Which is bizarre.
It's very bizarre.
To a point where Lindsey Graham's proposed bill of a 15-week federal abortion law is now considered extreme and banning abortion, which is a law that I think someone like yourself who's fully pro-life is like, hell no. But then you look over and they want us to be so much like Europe. That law is much more relaxed in almost every single European nation. So it's kind of bizarre where Lindsey Graham is essentially doing what you described, the original, Democrat position of safe, legal, and rare. A 15-week limit would be safe, legal, and rare. It would fall right under that category. So it's kind of, we're so polarized at this point.
Right. We're so polarized and everything is just shifted. And I want to say that it shifted hard left, but especially, so if we want to talk about what really pushed me away from the Democrat Party, what really pushed me away from the Democrat Party was identity politics. I saw it happening and I didn't really like it, but it's kind of one of those things, well, it's my team and you just kind of ignore it. And I wasn't being principled, right? So, that's like the story of my political life was, for one, getting information from one side of the source, right? I was always getting right-leaning perspectives from the left, right? I never watched Fox News directly. I would watch Fox News through The Daily Show when they take clips and make fun of them, right? I was getting bad information, or at least lopsided information, deciphering that information from bad or not. I want to say deciphering information from a biased source. That's the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
I wasn't being principled in how I really felt about something in comparison to my politics versus with the team that I'm supposed to be on, the Democrat team. So the pro-choice part, I wasn't comfortable with it, but I was going along with, well, it's her body, her choice, but I'm still uncomfortable with this.
Yeah.
it's stuff like that where I got to a point where I just started saying what makes sense to me, and I'm going to be consistent in that position as often as I can, right? So whether it pisses off the left or pisses off the right, I want to be consistent in this position.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think a lot of people who leave the left say, fuck it, I'm going to the right. But for me, I said, I'm leaving the left because I realized I became like a team oriented thing. It left me and went to the party and what the party believed and what the party wanted. And I lost what I felt and what I feel about certain things. And I saw me sticking with the team. It was going further left. Who's to say that in 5 to 10 years, I become a Republican and they start going into some weird, crazy direction?
The Republicans hate Republicans. And the thing that people that we talk about a lot, and that Dave and I say, and my dad raised us this way, because my dad, listen, we were raised, me specifically, David kind of wasn't old enough at this point, but I was raised a Rush baby. My dad had Rush Limbaugh on a lot, and he would constantly say, you don't have to agree with every single thing to be conservative, to be on the right. You could still disagree, but if most of your principles align there, then it's okay to say that. For me, it's like I'm definitely on the more of like a paleo conservative side, if you want to throw a tactical like label or whatever it is, technical one on it. But it's like, me and you would probably disagree with abortion because I believe there's certain exceptions. You're fully pro-life. I'm okay with that though. It's like, but we still fall more on the side of, I would like, you want no abortion. I want extremely less, very extremely rare abortion. But we could both agree that it is killing a baby. We both fall into those grounds. There can be the debate if we really want to get into it on the moralism of killing anything and whether it's correct. But the thing is, me and you don't have to completely agree, but we agree on a lot of other principles. So we still would go into the same, I guess, category if there was to be a label. So I feel like people have so many fears of labels now. And I think it's unnecessary because being labeled doesn't mean you have to agree with every single part of it. And I feel like the big political dialogue now is if you agree with one, you have to agree with it all, period.
Yeah.
And I don't like that at all. Dave, you had to jump in.
I did want to say, like, that kind of brings me to what I wanted to bring up, starting from what made you actually want to make your book in the first place, Adam. I'm very interested in the fact that, you said you felt like you really didn't have anywhere to speak about what you wanted to say. Like, you didn't have anywhere to voice your opinion. And I feel like that's where a lot of people have landed. Yeah. And why, they even start doing these shows. That's part of the reason why we started doing it. Yeah. Because we like broadcasting, we like radio and stuff, but who's to say that we would ever want to do this unless we felt like, I kind of want to say what I believe without feeling like I'll be attacked on social media or wherever else. And it seems like a common complaint and a common reason why people often find themselves in these ventures, because, it used to be like, oh, you could be neighbors with someone and you could have different opinions, but still have them over every now and then. But that doesn't seem to be what it is anymore, at least not on the internet. Maybe in real life, it's a little better. It definitely is. But at least on the internet, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, and I always keep that in perspective. Like,
yes,
there's Twitter, and then you go outside.
Yes,
touch grass. Yeah, and they're both real. It's just that one fosters an environment of being so exaggerative, and so for me, I don't want to feed into that. I never really wanted to feed into that. And that's why I don't really write that way. I'm not really hyperbolic when I write, but I'm strong in my opinion about things that I think are extremely negative for our society. So, for example, I have an article coming out with the Daily Mail very soon talking about Black Lives Matter. And I'm strong in my language about them because I think they've been detrimental to our society, not because I'm taking this right-wing position. No. It's like when you guys take $90 million, let's say, for example,
thank you.
Is it similar to what you said to Ron Coleman on Twitter? What he could tell them, what to say to them?
Exactly. You know what? I said that because I was like, I really want him to say the N-word.
Can you imagine
I was
Ron
like,
Coleman saying that?
Yeah, I wanted to see like, will Ron actually do it?
I gave him the card. He could say it. I gave him the card.
Take
Do
it,
it, man.
take
Do
it.
it. Take advantage. Get canceled.
Oh man.
Oh my God.
I love Ron. Ron, I say it also, we're cousins. But I lost my train of thought now.
I'm
sorry. It was
on your article of BLM.
The BLM
Yes,
article, yes.
Yeah. So if there was a company that made $90 million in a year, that's a lot of money. And they're in the public eye, we should be allowed to criticize how they made their money, what they're doing with that money. Are they supporting child labor in a foreign nation? What are you doing with this money? It's even more so because they are a nonprofit, and their what they do with their money is public information, right? That's actually one of the good things, and I think people should do that more. I did that with my book. You can look up any 501c3. They are supposed to, which the vast majority of them do, otherwise they lose their tax exemption.
Yeah.
They post what they did with their money, right? And so you can go and look up any organization. I did that with Al Sharpton's organization to basically see that he pays himself $1 million a year. And it's very questionable what he does with the rest of that money. I think he spent like six figures in quote unquote phones. Now, I don't know what that means.
Buying, dog.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, phones, antique phones, rotary that are costing a lot of money at this point. Like collecting, is he a phone collector?
I'm like, what does this mean? Like, because here's the thing, it's not like he has this massive building.
No.
And he's paying for like some crazy, even if he did, phone service is not that expensive, right?
Get business class. There's something called business class. You get a discount for this type of thing.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, all this stuff is just sketchy. All this stuff, and people should really look up these organizations and look up their tax status, and look up these. I think they're called the 990 forms, I believe is what it's called. But look up these forms and see what they're doing with their money. Black Lives Matter, for example, is really interesting because they made $90 million in a year, but their previous year they filed with $0. Zero. They made no money. So they went from $0 to $90 million.
That's great PR and marketing.
That's why they're hoarding cash. That's why they don't know what to do with it. They were just a message and a movement, right? A movement of some sort, right? But they have nothing. And that's the problem that you see with progressives and leftists. They have these very big, lofty goals in mind of saving society and changing society, making a utopia, but they have no idea how to get there. They have no idea what it takes to do it. And when finally given the money, they have no idea how they even want to spend it.
The issue of communism, and I'm going to bring James Lindsay up again because he has a great piece of New Discourses that he podcasts. Communism doesn't know how. And you kind of mentioned that because they don't know. And part of the issue with the Marxist theory and the communist theory is that if you do have a concrete idea how, then you're not actually going on the dialectic. You're now a traditionalist and a reactionary. So you can't actually have an idea of how to get things done because then you're not progressing the dialectic. You're only being a reactionary and you're now being a material. By default, they can't have a solution to their problems that is in their doctrine and their belief. So it is, and I love that you said that they have no idea how because they're not allowed to know how. If you know how, you're kicked out. If you have an idea, you're kicked out. If you have any sort of brain synapses going in your head, besides the people that are trying to take the money, because that's all it is. In the end, you see Patrisse Cullors. How many houses does Patrisse Cullors have now? I think it's like she bought them for her family. She has her own. That was not her money. And she flat out said, I'm a trained Marxist. If you look into what the Marxist grift is, here it is. Here it is. So, Dave, do you want to jump in?
I said I did want to bring up, since it did happen currently, I know Kanye and Candace went out wearing White Lives Matter shirts, and that brought up this big controversy about it's been included BLM. And funny enough, Kanye himself on Instagram said, y'all should have known BLM was a scam. And at this point, I think it's pretty obvious that if it wasn't a scam in the beginning, it's definitely a scam now. Because, like you said, Patrisse Cullors has at least 4. She's probably looking at 5 houses. So, and I mean, there's been multiple lawsuits from the families that they were supposed to be giving money to.
BLM Local sued BLM Global. BLM Local recently sued BLM Global. Yeah. That's all you need to know about the fact that it's all about the money. Yeah. It's about money. That's all it's about. So, Adam, I have to ask you something, because I don't know if you were raised with this, but I was taught this. David, I don't know if you were taught this as much, because things kind of shifted as you were in school. But I was taught, as we're getting through, progressing through history and American history, once the Nixon campaign hit, there was an ideology shift, and that the Democrats became Republicans, Republicans became Democrats ideologically. Now, I always scratch my head at that, because as I look at the past, the Democrats, it's pretty, easy for them to push this message, because the Democrats are the ones doing all the shit. Back in the day, they were the ones that were responsible for Trail of Tears. They did internment camps. They did slavery. They were the KKK, segregation. And now I look at what's going on now. And it's essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, they're going back to segregation. But instead, they're convincing the people that they want to segregate that it's for their own good. And they're actually getting this message across. And these people are believing it. Do you see that occurring as well? That it's basically the same exact people in history that did segregation are now saying, people of color. Just switch 2 words around and they go back to their old Southern roots, calling them colored people. So it's is it insane of me to sit there and look and say these people have not changed? They've just gotten better at the messaging and kind of hid for a while, and now they're back.
Yeah, I think it goes back to how compassion can turn into something that's of a nemesis for people.
Yep.
I actually tweeted the other day, I can't remember the year, the 1800s, it was separate but equal, but today it's separate but equity, right? It's the same stuff. This idea that let's keep the blacks away is now, well, the black people deserve their own space to have their own culture. And, so what's the difference? The difference is in dialogue, but the action is still the same, right? The action is to keep people separate. And I think also about someone like Margaret Sanger and as being part of the progressive movement of that time.
A eugenicist in America.
Yeah.
Pure evil.
Yeah. But they were progressive. They were far ahead of you. You're feeble-minded. They were far ahead. But
fascism's on the right. And eugenics walks hand in hand in fascism, but fascism's on the right, Adam. Didn't we know that?
Exactly. I've just learned that, especially the past couple of years, it's become very obvious. And it's so funny when they try to. So everybody always points fingers at each other. They always try to use the same lines. But when the left tries to say that the right is projecting, and I'm like, okay, well, how are they projecting? And I'm looking that's not what projection is. Clearly you don't know what projection is.
No.
But what's happening is I would say my old team, the left, is projecting racism onto the right. And the reason I say that is as someone, it's one thing to be always on one side. Let's say you were always a Republican and you've been entrenched in that, and that's all you know. One of the things about my political awakening was not like the normal political awakening. Usually people say, oh, hold up, I was a default Democrat, now I'm going to become a Republican.
Yeah.
My political awakening was, well, hold up. If this entire time I'm listening to everybody say these things, then let me hear everything. So I actually went left. to listen to what they had to say. I listened to progressives for years. I listened to Jimmy Dore, which actually I still listen to Jimmy Dore because he's anti-establishment.
Jimmy Dore is someone that a lot of people on the right will agree with certain things and then not. He's a little more of an honest, crazy leftist. If there's some way to put that.
You know what it is? I love Jimmy Dore, one, because he's funny. Two, he recognizes, like, even if these people disagree with you on 50% of what you say, like, when they agree with you on something, that's a win.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
So he has no problem going on Tucker Carlson because him and Tucker Carlson agree on something very particular, and that's a win. So he doesn't try to alienate an audience that will agree with him on certain things. As far as his policies, like, he'll say stuff like, with that amount of money, they could have solved homelessness. They could have given everybody homes. And I'm like, that's not how life
hyperbole,
works.
dude.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, that's extreme hyperbole. You're wrong anyway. Like,
Like, that's not the housing. Not having houses isn't the problem.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I learned a lot from Jimmy Dore. I learned a lot about corruption. I learned a lot about what was happening within the very party that I'm sitting here supporting. And I'm like, holy shit, I never knew about this. He's talking about, and still to this day, I'm anti-war. He's talking about anti-war stuff. And I'm like, how come the party that proclaimed years ago of being the anti-war party, it was George W. Bush that wanted us to go into Afghanistan, Iraq, right? And they're the ones who are also behind it. And meanwhile, he's pointing out how it's much of the uniparty within the federal government.
Yep.
And so, like, you have all these things. So I listen to progressives outside of Jimmy Dore. I listen to Kyle Kulinski. I listen to David Pakman a little bit. There's one other guy, I can't remember his name right now. But I listen to progressives. The Young Turks, I could never get into. They were insufferable. I was open-minded. I tried the Young Turks live
They're
stream.
named the Young Turks. They're named after a terrorist organization. How are we supposed to take them seriously?
But just even outside of that, like, I was trying to listen to, like, they're the most dry personality people.
Oh yeah.
Like, you have Anna, who's just always angry, and then you have
Tank, who just yells. Tank Uger just yells. That's all. His whole thing is Uger is yelling.
Right. Outside of that, the other personalities that they have no personality. They're the most dry people I've ever listened to, and they put them on TV.
Bunch of Ben Steins. Ben Stein has more personality.
I will say
Ben Stein has more personality. Exactly.
Young Turk clips on YouTube are hilarious to watch with the right editing.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's why when Jimmy rags on them, those are the best.
Oh yeah.
He'll spend an hour just laughing at everything they're saying. But the point I'm trying to make is that I went progressive as far as listening to what they had to say. It's not like I just took it and I saw how they thought and I saw how they saw the world. Then I said, okay. And I started listening to maybe some libertarians, and then I started listening to conservatives. So I've listened to the entire spectrum, outside of, like, the extreme crazies.
Yeah.
But I listened to the spectrum, and I decided to think for myself as far as how I see certain things. Today's conservative viewpoint sounds much like the old liberal viewpoint.
It sure does.
and mixed in with some old conservative viewpoints.
Yeah.
And so, to me, I'm like, all right, today's conservative makes more sense, right? When someone says, here's a policy that I want, and my next question is, how will you do that? And they have no answer. Well, at least conservatives can tell you how they think it will happen, right? And so I'm dealing with a party that's built on fantasies and ideas and all this stuff. And I'm on the other side, I at least have conservatives, the conservative people who are like, here's what I believe in. Here's why. Here's what I think will happen. Here's how it will happen. Here's the policy that I want. Here's how we get there. And I'm like, y'all are giving me information, to stuff that makes sense. And you're explaining things. So for me, I'm kind of analytical. And so that's why, like, I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't see myself becoming a Democrat ever again. And I don't really see myself becoming a staunch Republican. I like being an independent because it gives me the ability to speak for myself and how I truly feel as an independent individual. If today my viewpoints align with the right, then they align with the right, and so be it. So, and that's what it seems like today. You know, this November will be the first time I'm likely to vote for a Republican in my life, and that's not all my doing. That's also my old party's doing, and I try to express that. But I feel like we veered away from the original.
Oh no, I'm
that's
fine with that. I love this conversation. It's fantastic. So, before we get too late into this, though, we have to bring up your fantastic Substack article that you have out. It's your most recent one. What is a man? The big thing came out with Matt Walsh, What is a Woman? And it was about the whole entire, trans community and what they're doing to young kids there and how it's an atrocity. But you took a different approach with What is a Man. And I loved your approach there, and it had nothing to do with the trans ideology. So anyone listening to this has nothing to do with that. But there's been a lot of conversations, especially on the right, about masculinity, about, how the left tried to make masculinity into a bad thing. They tried to demonize masculinity. And you broke it down to an even more simple thing about what is a man and kind of the traits of what it is of being a man. So you gave a little introspective into there. Talk a little bit about that Substack article that you did, and what was your inspiration there? Because I feel like men, women alike can read that and get a very good perspective. And you had me nodding my head a whole bunch as I'm reading it. So, go into that a little bit with me.
Yeah, much like in the article, I state, I didn't grow up with my father, so for me, the concept of manhood wasn't even a concept I even thought about. I grew up with my mom and my sister, and I didn't think about what it meant to be a man or anything like that. I didn't.
Did you have any adult male guidance that was like truly, like close to you or anything like that?
No, not at all. My mother never got married. She rarely had any sort of relationship. And we moved a lot. So I didn't have any male figures or positive male figures or anything like that in my life outside of school or personal or anything like that. And I believe I put in the article, also saying it was to the point where when I was in my late teens and I started going around other men, I was uncomfortable around men. Like you go to the barbershop and everybody's comfortable, like, yeah, man, what's going on? Like, and that's
supposed to be a space where a man expresses themselves. Like that's what the boys are the boys. You talk about guy stuff, you talk about women, and you're supposed to be comfortable at the shop when you're getting cut up. Like that's supposed to be a spot where you guys are open. You're not worried about being judged or anything like that.
Right. Exactly. And, even something simple as like handshakes, right.
Or the head nod. The head nod, you just learn it. And you know what the difference is. Like there is kind of a difference and you kind of just learn it.
Right. So you have all these different things, but those things you typically learn from your father. Right. And so, my concept of what is a man, I had no idea. And it wasn't until I had my son at the age of 21 that it kind of like jump-started, me taking things seriously and figure out like, how do I raise him to be a man? And so I had to look at myself. And so in some ways, like I had to go from like a blank slate as far as being a father. And then as time went on, the question of what is a man kind of mixed with being a good father, but also just understanding the traits. But I would say, I think I put in the article, I didn't feel like I didn't make it to this point until maybe about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm 38. And so that's a long time to kind of go with being unsure with yourself, to, like I said, having depression.
At any point, did you think that you were a woman instead?
No, not that bad. No, but I just felt inferior.
Yeah.
I just felt inadequate as a man.
Yeah.
And especially when you compare it to someone who did grow up with their father, who does look secure, who does look happy, who does fit what you might think a man might look like. Someone might look at me and say, Adam, you're a man, but I didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
I didn't feel it. Right. And so for me, it took a long time to learn all these different things, improve as a father. I mainly was just operating off of like, how would I have wanted my father to treat me? And that's how I try to treat my son. But yeah, as far as the things I talk about, as far as what is a man, protection is one of those big ones where I think men have either dropped the ball or society has let men down as far as understanding how important protection is. We are supposed to be the ones who are protecting our children, right? Mothers, yes, but the fathers are supposed to be, the chief, right? They're supposed to be in charge of protecting the family. That is a role that we sacrifice for. I have a wife. I take a sense of responsibility when she is hurt emotionally by someone, right? Something happened at a wedding day, and I was pissed. And I was to the point where I was like, F this person. And it was
something
close.
chemical. It's something chemical that occurs when you have that bond with your wife. I'm married. I have 2 kids. It's something chemical that happens that, you can't understand it. And I'm sorry, Dave, you're not there yet because you're not married. But it is a certain thing. And a married man will understand that when your wife is not even physically hurt, but when you could see she's clearly emotionally hurt, we do have that need to, all right, whose ass am I going to kick? And even if you don't, but that's the mentality of like, how am I going to make, I can't make this better, but how can I? Type of deal.
Right. And we're supposed to feel that way when it comes to our kids as well.
Nice.
So I think that there's a particular narrative, especially when we talk about fathers, as being indifferent to children. And I really, really hate that.
Yeah.
Where they're like, for example, people would tell me like, because I'm not married to my son's mother. I have my son every weekend, and I talk to him all the time. And people are like, Adam, that's so great that you have him every weekend, because I know a lot of fathers who have him every other weekend. And to me, I'm saying, I don't feel like having him every weekend is good enough. Right. But that's like this new standard. It was like, oh, at least you see your kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, at least you're trying. And it's like, that's such a pathetic standard, right? That is a pathetic standard.
Right. And I'll never say, as much as people say I'm a good father, and I do the best that I can, but I always feel like I'm behind because I'm not there every day. Right. Like I'm not the one who's putting him to bed every day. Well, he's 17 now and he's taller than me, but I'm not the one who's theoretically putting him to bed.
You would still try to tuck him in and be like, Dad, I told you, get out of here, man.
But I only have so much influence. I only have so much oversight when it comes to the day-to-day. Like, that is a subpar standard that we've just now accepted because there's so many of them. And I every chance I get, whether it's in an article or publicly, I try to tell people the United States has the highest rate of single parenthood in the world. Right? We like to say we're number one, but we're the number one in this. And this is a terrible thing to be number one in. And that is why our society is slowly breaking apart. It's slowly breaking apart because
Great society. Thanks, Great Society. Thanks, Linda Mead. Thank you for motivating single parent homes more than the nuclear family. It really ties back down to choices made by politicians and a lot of those things. And, it's terrible. Now, I got to ask you, Christian Walker, did you see the video that he recently put out on Twitter?
Yes, I did.
I have a lot of problems with a lot of reactions to it on both sides. On both sides. If anyone that doesn't know, go watch Christian Walker's video. He essentially is calling out Herschel Walker for lying about the family life that the Walkers have had every single step on the campaign trail. He says that his father was not there for him, essentially, although we've seen Christian campaigning with his father multiple times. He said he was just trying to keep it up because there were promises made. He didn't go into super details, but his dad has 4 kids with 4 different women. He kind of goes in on his dad. And first off, what was your reaction to Christian's video as it came out?
So it's so coincidental that you're asking me this. So the first thing I saw was the tweet. I didn't see I didn't realize there were videos. I just saw the tweet last night and I was like, oh man. I was like, he went in.
Yep.
It wasn't until today that I saw that there were videos. And so I watched both the videos and I'm like, oh, I get it. Right. Because with video, you can see his frustration, you can see his disappointment, and you can feel where he's coming from.
It's emotional.
It's emotional.
Very.
Right. And I actually, he follows me. We follow each other. And I don't think I'm talking out of turn by saying this, but I sent him a message and I said, listen, I support what you said. And the reason I say that is because I don't think a lot of people understand what it's like to come from a home and have a father figure that you're disjointed with, right? I have, and not everybody has. And thankfully, not everybody has. So not everybody can understand that.
David and I are fortunate, so we don't we can only empathize. Yeah. We are very fortunate, and we realize we're fortunate.
Right. So, I told him, I understand where you're coming from. When my father passed away a handful of years ago, and I felt nothing because he wasn't in my life. Yeah. Like I had no connection with him. And I can only imagine if my father, the man that I didn't really have any connection with, was some famous guy who's like, I'm the world's greatest dad, I'm Mr. Family Man. Meanwhile, you've been probably going to therapy, you've been dealing with all this personal trauma, you've had all these issues because your father wasn't there, and now he's lying to the world about his involvement in your life, and you already feel some sort of weird relationship because he is your father, and you still want to love him because he is your father, but you can't help to have that negative pain inflicted by his neglect. So not a lot of people can understand to the point of me like feeling indifferent about my father dying. Not everybody can feel that. And I'm glad that not everybody can feel that. But I wanted to send him a message saying, like, I support what you're doing, even if it pisses off a few conservatives. Yeah. Because you're doing the right thing for you. Yes. And he's still your father. And how he's portraying to the world of his behavior as a father does impact you. Like I said, I would be pissed if my father, who called me once a year to ask me how's school, and then, for 5 minutes, and then to talk to my mom, and all he basically did was pay child support, and I rarely saw him. Or when my father did come over, he basically would come over because he would make a run to New York City to buy some fabric because he was a tailor. He would sleep with my mom, and then my father always left in the middle of the night. I never said goodbye to my dad. My father would leave $100 bill for us, and he would leave in the middle of the night. Never saw my father leave, never said goodbye, never waved goodbye. And he may have just thought, oh, I want to get an early start on the road, leave early in the morning to go back to Detroit. But I was always like, yo, where's dad? Like, I can't even get a goodbye. And I still feel that. And I could only imagine if that same man went on television, was running for office and talking about how great of a father he was, gloating, like that would infuriate me. So I sent him a message and he thanked me for it. But I sent him a message saying, like, not everybody's going to understand, but I get it, and I support what you're doing.
Yeah, and I will say, I think this really hits on the need for genuine men to step up in fatherhood and actually be there, because it's a very different connection from a mother. Obviously, things can go wrong in motherhood, but you are literally in her womb. You are a part of her. You grew inside of her. Like, there is a specific connection there that takes a lot to really tear down. A father, you're not that connected in that way, but you're mainly learning, I believe. I don't remember if you said it in the article or if you said it in one of your shows, but you're learning from his actions. You copy almost everything your father does, and you see everything he does. So if he is a little too emotional on some things, you're going to be a little too emotional on some things. It's a big copycat movement. And if he's never there, you're never going to make any of that connection to figure out, especially as a son, you're never going to make that connection to figure out kind of how you are going to act later on and even then in life. So, I mean, I can only imagine what it's like to just not have that role model there, because it's just a completely different kind of look and perspective growing up, looking at your father and looking at your mother. So I mean, so that's why, like, I'm not going to lie, I forgot to watch the video because I'm the worst. But I did read,
you do suck.
Yeah, and I did read the tweet. And I mean, for me, I mean, I don't like talking about like that stuff much because it is their family. I don't like But the thing is, I empathize with the fact that if he's actually doing all that stuff when you're younger and he's out there saying all this stuff about being a family man, it's like, you need to slow your roll, dog. Like, come on, like that's not right.
It isn't. And one of the things that I got really annoyed about is because if I follow Christian for a long time now. And if you're a conservative that follow Christian, you've been rah-rah on his team this whole time when he is saying what you want him to say. And he's been, he's a strong advocate. He's a gay man. He's a black man. And, and I feel like a lot of conservatives used him as like a targeted weapon. And now we see that because now that he's sitting there and potentially hurting the chance to get a seat and get Warnock out of that seat, now people are turning on him. And I don't like that. I don't like seeing conservatives like, oh, it's convenient timing. Why did you campaign with him? And people, I don't understand what it's like to come from an abusive home or anything like that, or a home where those types of things occurred that Christian's saying occurred. But I can empathize with that. And I can empathize with the fact that he's been putting on a lot of an act when it's come to his father because he just wanted to be a good son. That was his goal a lot in the end, is to be a good son. And it really annoys me as somebody who, again, you talked about, the conservatives, a lot of them, you saw them, a lot of them having principles and things like that. Well, where are the principles now? If we're supposed to be this life party, this party that gives a shit about people, we're trying to be the ones that say that now. We're trying to take that mantle because the left has had it for so long that they care about people. If we're saying that, then why are we not supporting one of our biggest names right now in conservatism, especially on Twitter, is Christian Walker? And he's been so good in everything he said, but now that he has a moment and he could potentially hurt a campaign, you're going to turn on him? I find that to be terrible. And on the other side, the leftists, all your Ukraine flag and bio and name crap people are now sitting there and wanting to hear what he has to say. Before, he was an Uncle Tom. He wasn't really LGBTQ. He was a fascist, a Nazi, a bigot. But now, because you might get an election win because of him, now you're all going to quote tweet him. Like, it's just the both sides. And it's the shittiness of Twitter and how terrible it is. But I saw that. And after hearing Christian and just seeing the pain that he was in, and I've been in, Christian's Twitter spaces and stuff. They're always eventful because he's hilarious with a lot of things he says. But just to see that side of him, to see that raw emotion, and he was hurting doing that. There was not a single part of Christian that it looked like wanted to do that and wanted to come out there knowing what it was probably going to do to his father's campaign. I think there was a part of him that was still not wanting to do that. Yeah. But, it was tough to watch. And Herschel Walker is probably never going to listen to this. But Herschel Walker, if you want to have a shot in anything, you're going to come out. You're going to acknowledge you did this shit. You're going to apologize, and you're going to come and you're going to try to run a campaign still, but you're going to get on top of this and admit to it. Because, man, I don't know if I want somebody that's a quote unquote conservative Republican or a freaking Trump choice that is going to get in office and have this on his closet and not acknowledging it. That's kind of my rant on that.
No, sorry. And I agree with you. This is part of the issue when it comes to values versus power.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people would sacrifice their values to gain power, or even just hypothetical power. And I don't mean to say this kind of flippantly, but it's a Senate seat.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Senate seat.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, I feel the same way about the whole Dr. Oz thing. It's like, man, you guys had a bunch of shitty choices for Republican, but like Dr. Oz?
Yeah, exactly.
But they put him at the right person because John Fetterman the guy had a stroke. That's a serious issue.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't talk, if you can't show up, if you can't deliberate, then you can't be in a body that's supposed to deliberate to create law.
Well, so but you could be president, so it's all right.
Yeah.
But I feel like they put Dr. Oz there intentionally.
Yeah, well, Dr. Oz put himself there intentionally.
Yeah.
I like to call him the New Jersey resident because you have a lot of gall moving. So I imagine if I'd like picked up and moved to Germany and I just said, I'm going to run for office. I can make this place better.
Yeah.
Like, you'd be like, you just got here. How would you? Like,
I want to be chancellor. Give me an
I want to be chancellor. You guys are doing it all wrong. I know how to make this place better. Like, to me, that there's something about that like this will never happen. There has to be some sort of law, like you have to live here for X amount of time before your ass can get up and try to represent the state.
It's wild that isn't a law. Like, I feel like you should have to live somewhere for like a decade before you can run. Like, because you know something about it.
I'll give you 3 years. Right. If you live there for 3 years, that gives you a good idea as to what's going on.
Yeah, I wouldn't do 3 years because 3 years, these wealthy people like a Dr. Oz would just buy a house and have an address for 3 years.
Yeah,
but if it's 10's an investment. You have to actually spend some time there. If you're going to do a decade there, you're going to actually be there every once in a while.
Well,
a rich dude could just buy a house and have an address.
But you would think that the people that live there in the first place might take into consideration who they're voting for and say,
it's John Fetterman running against him. It's anybody but
that.
John.
I get that. But they had a primary before that. Oz didn't need to be the Republican candidate. He didn't need to be it. But they didn't care.
Name recognition obviously helps.
Obviously, but it's wild.
Did you guys I know we're getting on to Fetterman, but did you guys watch any of those debates?
I did not.
I did not. Were they that good?
No, most debates are shit. But
they are.
But I watched it because I was writing an article about it, and I wanted to like actually sit there and watch the debate and see what Dr. Oz had to say. So the debates were after he got the Trump endorsement, and let me tell you, it was like you imagine like a TV show, and the debate's about to happen, and you have this guy who's running for office, and he's talking to his campaign manager, and his campaign manager is like, every chance you get, mention Trump. He's like, Trump, got it. Mention Trump. And that's literally what he did for about 80% of his answers. Yeah. Like 80% of his answers, he would mention Trump, just like Trump wanted. I want to make sure that the borders are secure. Like, just like Trump said, he went full bore into what Trump wanted, right? Because all he cared about was that Trump endorsement.
Yep.
I swear to you, once he gets elected, or not once he gets, if he gets elected and he becomes a senator for Pennsylvania, he will not mention Trump ever again.
Dropping him. I mean, pretty sure he already dropped his name a good amount.
Like, and also, if you look at Dr. Oz's positions before this, he has no business being on the Republican ticket.
Yeah.
The guy is not a conservative. He's not. He's going to go there. We're going to have a Mitt Romney problem with this dude.
He knew that Trump was handing out endorsements. He took the opportunity to jump on that political bandwagon. That's why I think, especially on the federal level, these federal politics seem so slimy. It's so like the schmarmy character. I think Dr. Oz has shown himself to be such a someone who wants power. That's basically it. If you take normal people like me and you, and someone said run for local office, you're like, I don't want to do that shit.
Yeah,
I've
exactly.
considered it, so I'm one of the. I've
gotta
actually
go
considered it.
You've considered it?
I have considered it. It's just difficult. Honestly, I don't want to join up with my local Republican Party because I think a lot of them are dumb. But I really I would go in there and they'd be like, say this, and I'd be like, no, I don't want to do. But that's kind of what's a roadblock for me.
Yeah, they'll be like, say you want the border secure. You're like,
I'm in New York.
My position, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm in Poughkeepsie, New York. What the hell?
What are you trying to keep out Canadians?
Okay, yeah, no, you know what? Fine. I don't care about, just stop sending flights into Westchester and Stewart. Like, I'll be down with that. Like, that's when I have a problem. But the actual border has nothing to do with me. Texas.
Really?
Like,
yeah. They're like, yeah, just say the stuff. And then they want you to play as a telemarketer and call up donors and get money. Like, God, that must be the shittiest job.
You have to have an ego to do that.
Yeah,
like a mega ego and be like very convinced. And don't get me wrong, I think that there are some fairly okay politicians, and I'm going to say decent, because the biggest phenomenon Donald Trump did to me was he made politicians honest to everybody, because they're still not honest. But for now, for whatever reason, since Donald Trump came into office, all of a sudden, right and left trust politicians for some reason. Like, we believe them at their word and we take them at their word for some reason. And it's like, no, just because a bunch of weak ass Republicans can put on show votes now where they know they're going to lose doesn't mean we should trust them when they have any power. Because when they have power, they don't do anything. Like, it's a ridiculous notion, because now they're going to put on show votes. They did that all the time when they didn't have power under Obama. Then when they had power, they were like, maybe we don't want to repeal Obamacare. It's like, excuse me? You put up 7 bills when you didn't have power. You can't do one now. So no, politicians still suck.
Yeah, and my favorite politician is the one who's about to leave office. Then all of a sudden he's like, you know what? In another thing,
Adam Kinzinger,
balls of steel.
Adam Kinzinger, he's a good one right now. He's about to leave, and all of a sudden he's a liberal. He wasn't this liberal before he knew he was going to retire. Now all of a sudden, boom, he's a liberal. It's like, okay, thanks for showing your true stripes. Your voting record matches.
The fun thing about politicians, though, especially at the federal level, is they're trying to find like this zone between annoying but also charismatic. That is exactly the zone that they have to find, because their team's always emailing you. They're always trying to contact you, but they also have to get you to like them. And if someone tries to talk to you that many times in a day or a week, you're like, please get away from me. So it is actually incredible when someone can be good enough to gain a somewhat of a following. But the thing is, as we all know, if you ever watched any bit of C-SPAN, most of them have no personality at all. They're literally wooden planks. They're breadsticks up there. They can't do anything. And it's incredible. I mean, maybe it's somewhat just apathy in a lot of states, where it's just like, well, the policies are kind of what I want. I mean, I don't care about them, but I don't care about the other guys. So I'll just vote for them. It's Adam, it's a wild game federally.
I need you to start the Wrong Speak Party. We should start this up, the Wrong Speak Party, and it will be the answer to all the nonsense in the Uniparty.
Nah, you know what? So part of the reason why I'm just not even attracted to politics or running for office. Like, granted, they have their place. I think the more local, the better. If you could run for local office and affect your neighborhood, that's great. I think actually the bigger problem is that we've been looking at federal stuff to fix every goddamn thing when it should be a local matter. And these local politicians, local legislators get to skate by and no one ever notices anything, and people just go and vote D or R. And so outside of that, I think that what I'm doing, I don't think I'm that big of a personality or anything like that, or will ever be. But I think what I'm doing is contributing to the changing of culture, or at least being critical of culture. Because much of what we're seeing in politicians don't have an original idea in their fucking minds.
Not at all.
So all they're doing is reacting to the culture. All they're doing is reacting to the trend. Do you think Joe Biden gives a damn about transgender children 10 years ago?
No,
No.
He wouldn't care, but he's
Still
reacting
doesn't.
to the times. He still doesn't. He's like, we got to affirm their gender. Yeah, okay. He's like, what's a gender?
Today? Kamala, you still president?
Yeah, exactly. So all they do is react to the changing of culture.
Yep.
And that's where the power lies. We have to be able to criticize the culture of our society and be able to create new culture on top of it, or reinforce aspects of our culture, or protect certain aspects of our culture. And I feel like I'm in the position of trying to protect our culture, because I most of the things that we talk about, I don't even see it as a left versus right thing. A lot of people try to. I see it as you are either woke or not woke, right? You are either cool with progressive leftist irrational nonsense, or you're not. And there are so many people who are in the not camp, and there's so few people who are in the leftist progressive Marxist camp. And unfortunately, a lot of those people have a lot of power, a lot of influence, and a lot of money. And so they're the people who are creating the movies, that are creating the feminist stuff, who are trying to push certain things on us. They're the ones who are funding hospitals who are trying to transition children. They're the ones who are doing all these things within our society. And so now it's time for us to push back against those people. If they're in office, then push back against them in office. But we have to be able to criticize them. We have to be able to push back against them and reinforce that these people are smarmy assholes a lot of the time.
Sure.
And like, that's one thing I'm really thankful for, like the platform of like the New York Post, who's been letting me write for them almost, I want to say, like on a weekly basis, basically.
They've been fantastic.
Yeah. And it allows, and they give me the allowance to talk shit about people in a very intelligent manner. Right? Like, I got to say that Jonathan Capehart is the blackface of white supremacy. Because, and I made my point, and I explained why. Like, as asinine as a statement that is, well, now it exists. So I'm going to say, okay, if they're blackfaces of white supremacy, then Jonathan Capehart is one of them. And I'm going to explain why. Because he is a wealthy, elitist, progressive who gets to act like black people are weak and feeble every chance he gets.
The crazy thing, the left talks about cultural appropriation all the time. The people that have made the most money off the woke movement are rich white dudes. And the people that are backing all of this, that are pushing all of this, are rich white dudes. Do you know who's getting billions more? Rich white dudes. You know who might become a few millionaires? Some of the minorities, but even more white people. Okay, it's like it's such a bizarre thing that people just can't open or refuse to open their eyes to.
Yeah, I actually do have to ask Adam, how I'm gonna assume that you're gonna say a decent amount, but how much does this tie in to a good amount of lack of masculinity that we have found in our culture nowadays? Because I feel like the ability to just say no to an idea or I disagree to an idea has been very lost. And I mean, I feel like if you go to a college campus, younger men are actually getting better at this, I think, nowadays. But if you go to a college campus, there's probably still plenty of guys where around certain groups, they'll parrot every woke talking point. But if you get them one-on-one, they'll probably admit that's like, just trying to get some strange, man. Like, I'm just trying to get somewhere.
Did you see the girl that was next to me when you asked me that question?
Exactly. That's the whole thing. And they don't like respect their beliefs enough to say no to that idea and just let it go wherever it's going to go, because that's what you think. No, instead they'll contradict themselves just because they want something or someone.
Yeah, no, I do think that there is a lot of castrated men in our society, whether they do it to themselves or whether they've been raised in that environment. I have more sympathy for the ones that were raised in that environment, because I was like that. I have less sympathy for the ones who are just going with the times. It's a new age. Men can be women, women can be men. Just go with it, man. Like, I have less sympathy for those guys. You know, we should be able to say, no, this is unacceptable. And I'm not going to apologize for it.
Yeah.
You know, I will apologize for something I genuinely feel like I shouldn't have said that. But outside of that, you're not going to guilt me into apologizing for anything. One of my biggest pet peeves is when someone tells me what I should say or what I should do.
Yeah.
Well, you're not black if you don't vote for Joe Biden.
Oh, yeah. That's why I'm the president of Anglakistan. No, it's funny because this one guy was ranting on Twitter about something. Some guy who was like, "You should be out there fighting for me," and my response was, "No, don't tell me what I should be doing. Don't tell me what I should and shouldn't do. You don't fucking know me. Don't like. I don't like when anybody does that. I don't even like. My wife says like, you should meet this person. You'll like them, and my answer is no.
You know, I like to take. You know, it seems like you follow the same doctrine, the Eric July stance, where it's like, I don't agree to disagree. You're wrong. I'm right. If it's something that I know I'm correct on, there is no agreeing to disagree. It's me agreeing that you're wrong, and that's it. Like,
well, mine is a little. Mine's like, this is how I feel. If you agree with it, cool. If you don't, oh well.
Yeah, exactly.
Kick rocks. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I'm like, well, I don't agree with. Okay.
Who cares? Exactly.
I don't even want to know why. If you want to tell me, cool. If not, go away. Like,
right. And so like that's why I'm like I'm non-confrontational because I just don't care about. Like I find it funny when people care about the opinions of people they don't respect. Like, why do you care? Like, why would I care if a leftist calls me an Uncle Tom? Why would I care? I don't respect them anyways.
Exactly.
Why do you people care? So I don't like, for example,
you don't need validation.
I don't need validation and I don't need confirmation from anybody or confrontation. I don't go into Jamel Hill's messages and be like, you're blah, 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 blah. Like, why? Because she might see, here's the thing with having a blue check. People don't know when you have a blue check. So you have your replies, your notifications, you have your mentions, and when you have a blue check, you have verified. So you see any activity that someone who is verified has with you. So, you know, like I tweeted at Matt Walsh one time, and like 5 minutes later, he retweeted something. I was like, oh shit, because you check your verified.
Pretty dope.
And you know, so if I go at Jamel Hill, for example, or some other leftist or progressive who's a blue check, they're going to see what I'm saying and then they're going to want to argue with me. Then I'm going to get hate follows. And I have so many more productive things to do in my life.
Yes.
And I don't care. Jamel Hill's never going to agree with what I think. So why am I wasting the energy? Why would anybody?
And in the end, if you have the correct message, and you win in the end, then Jamel Hill's just going to go away anyway, where they're going to realize that she is a lunatic who's just trying to grift and say what she thinks is right now. Because I don't know if Jamel Hill feels the way that she says half the things that she says. She might, but I really feel like she just looks at it and she's just like, well, LeBron said it, so I should too. Like, I really feel like that might be, or they might actually look at each other's tweets and be like, what is Jamel's position today? Like, they might actually bounce off each other. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't need validation or anything from anyone I don't respect, I don't care about. And I don't need validation from people on quote unquote my team because I don't know you. I don't know you. Like,
I feel like the worst part about this is, though, we're not even saying validation or confrontation with most people that we're meeting in real life. These are people that we might not ever meet. These are people that we might see once if you like go to an event or something like that. Yeah. These are people online that you could just like, okay, screens off and just walk away from it. There's no reason for like caring about most of the things that they say.
Yeah.
And if I could just say one last thing.
Yeah.
For people like guys like yourself who are trying to build a platform, who are trying to meet people, like Twitter, I underestimated Twitter before I got on it. But I quickly realized, I'm like, Twitter is one huge networking app.
Nice.
You literally have the most prominent people who are on here, and you can network with them in whatever respective field that you're in. And especially if you talk about politics, Twitter has a strong realm in the political realm. So all these people are here. I can't tell you what my DMs look like. Just communicating with people and networking with people and talking to people. Why are you arguing with people who don't agree with you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just seems so unproductive. And I'm thinking to myself, you could go so much further. Look, like I said in the very beginning, this isn't about like bigging myself up. I'm just making the point that in a year, I went from having no public profile to I published a book. In a year, I went from no public profile to being on live television multiple times. I'm about to fly out to London in a month to go on Trigonometry, one of the biggest political podcasts.
Awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Congrats on that one.
I'll probably be on live TV. I'll probably be on GB News while I'm out there. Awesome. I'm meeting notable people. All of this happened because of Twitter. Why? Because I didn't spend my time arguing with people that will never agree with me. And I just feel like so many people are living unproductive lives. So many people, like, I think that's one of those aspects of masculinity, especially for men, like the masculine trait of like, yo, get better.
Be productive.
Get better at life. Be productive.
Keep moving forward. Do something. One foot in front of the other every single time.
Stop being catty with bitches on like, what are you guys doing? Yeah. So that's why you'll rarely see me. I've slipped up like once or twice. You'll rarely see me arguing with people.
Oh, I have a new goal now. I'm just gonna gaslight you every time I see someone stupid to try and get you to like enter an argument, and just so you can come at me instead. Like, Alex, go away. I'm not doing your show again. Leave me alone.
People have actually done that, and I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care what Jamel Hill. I don't care what any of these leftists have to say. Like, I'm like, whatever. It's silly. So, yeah.
But yeah, so, Adam, I feel like we could talk for like another 3 hours, but unfortunately we don't have the clout of Joe Rogan, so people wouldn't even click on it. So I really appreciate, you coming on. You mentioned, your DMs and stuff, they're full. You don't have to do this, but I really do appreciate you taking the time to come on. Again, he's Adam B. Coleman. He's the author of Black Victim to Black Victor, an op-ed writer. You heard at the New York Post, a lot of other places that I didn't have the time to write down and mention. Just go on his Twitter. He's written at a bunch of places, prominent public speaker, host of a Good Faith Space Twitter Space show, and the founder of Wrong Speak Publishing. Are there certain days where a Good Faith Space is on where people can put around their schedule to go on and listen to you?
So, well, technically speaking, Good Faith Space has been on hiatus for a bit. Okay. I was doing it for about 6 months straight. Every Wednesday, I think it was at 7:30 p.m. I got a little bit burnt out on it.
It happens.
And the return from doing it was negligible. And so, I just wanted to focus on other things. So whether I do it again in the future is up for debate. But we'll see.
But again, okay, so he's a big cultural giant now. He's only on the rise. He's somebody that is important in the battle because, unfortunately, you might not want to be on it, but we are in a battle. The leftists don't get tired. Communists don't get tired. If you ever read the Gulag Archipelago, you may get tired, but the communists, the leftists will not get tired. So we're here. He's an important member of it. All around good dude. Adam, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Anything else you want to promote? Your book, obviously, your Substack. Where can people go find your Substack?
AdamBColeman.substack.com, and also check out Wrong Speak's Substack, wrongspeak.substack.com.
Awesome. Again, Dave, do you have anything to say before we close on out here?
No, it was a great conversation, which I highly expected and I was excited for. So I'm very happy we got to have Adam on.
Certainly. Again, Alex Cuesta Show. Like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars. Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. It's the best way to get these types of messages across that we're trying to do here. And go find us on the socials, The Alex Cuesta Show. Everybody, we'll be back next week. So long.